We do have action items this evening. We'll start with the regular Board of Education items, and I'd like a motion for approval of the minutes, item A1.
So moved.
Mrs. Shaw, is there any second?
Second.
Mr. Philipchak, any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed or abstentions? Okay. Move on now to our education items. I'd like a motion to combine items B1, 2, 3, 4, and 5.
So moved. Second?
Mrs. Howard, Mrs. Shaw, is there any discussion? Mr. McAvoy.
No.
I have a question. Could you just please explain to the public why the competition is not something that needs to be approved as a field trip? I just thought that was part of the athletic budget. I didn't think that's considered a field trip.
It's an overnight. Overnight trips require board approval.
Okay. And I had a question on item B3. Can you explain how, just looks to me like these costs have gone up dramatically over the last couple of years. I don't ever remember a psych evaluation being $3,000.
Do we have any historical reference, Mr. Janela?
Yeah. This is,
And I don't remember any of
Well,
these.
typically, I mean, we've asked these kinds of questions before, and I don't proclaim to know, all the answers on this. But in light of the fact that this physician who provides these evaluations is in Springfield, New Jersey, I'm assuming that we had a specific need in that geographic area, and that therefore they can pretty much, when they say they are making themselves available to us, can pretty much say how much they think their work is worth.
this one is most likely for this kind of a rate, is most likely a neurological, involves a neurological,
Right.
neuropsychological
Yeah. And it's probably an
evaluation.
independent educational evaluation as
Right.
well.
And that would also just put them on the list, doesn't mean that we have to use them, it depends on what the necessity is for that individual student at that time.
So this was for a specific student, or this is just somebody we're adding to the list of people that we're using as contractors?
Well, this is probably
I'm sure.
added
I'm going to
to
say
the
this
list.
this was added for a
With
specific
a
student.
specific student in mind.
And Lou, the one thing that perhaps not everyone is aware of, these independent educational evaluations for which the law provides, the parent does get the choice of the actual provider as long as it meets the overall criteria that is set by the board. And the board's ability to set that criteria is somewhat limited under the law.
Okay. I think, any other
So it's
questions?
called, just get your checkbook out. Okay.
I just don't ever remember a psych
I know.
evaluation that high.
Would you like us to get more
It's not a
research,
regular
more
site.
information on it?
It's not a regular psych.
Talk about-
No, you're supposed to be 5 days degree.
Right.
Okay. I'm sorry then. Any other questions then on any one of those items? I need a roll call on that.
Mrs. Chu?
Yes.
Mrs. Howard?
Yes.
Mr. McAvoy?
Yes.
Mr. Philipchak?
Yes.
Mrs. Shaw?
Yes.
And Dr. Cohen?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Move on to operation items. I'd like a motion for items C1 and C2.
So moved.
Mrs. Howard?
Second.
Oh, I'm sorry, those, Mrs. Shaw was the first and the second by Mrs. Howard. Is there any discussion? Mr. McAvoy?
It's sort of like, here we go again, but did you get certificate of occupancy to use these two facilities?
Yes, sir, we did.
You did.
Yes, we did.
Yet, $7,000 for Churchill and 10 for the high school. These are checklists. Is this the last time we're going to hear from this, Mr. Julian?
Probably not.
Probably not.
Probably a few other odds and ends.
So even though the kids get in and we're working, and there's still going to be some tweaking and you may...
There may be some outstanding things that were already done and haven't made their way through yet on the formal change order.
Right.
Got it?
Mrs. Chu.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mrs. Chair, I didn't see it.
Yeah, just a related question, so, generally, I understand change orders are needed for projects, for unforeseen items, but flooring and paint just seems like very basic things, and I was surprised to see that as a change order.
Now, these were a couple of things that were not originally contemplated when the original plan was done, and since they were the sole areas that had not been addressed within those two media centers, it was best to just deal with that while we were in there.
So it was determined later on?
Yes.
That it was necessary as opposed to leaving the
Yes.
existing flooring?
Yes.
Okay.
And that type of thing does go through building and grounds, specifically we look at different products and color selections. And so we did ask building and grounds to weigh in on certain design pattern, the colors. So when you see the media centers and the tour that we're hoping to get scheduled in the near future, you'll actually get to see the area that we're talking about at this change order. And it made good sense, as Mr. Giuliano said, to make that change now.
But as a mea culpa, we only had samples that were this big. So if they look terrible, I don't know what to say.
It actually looks really good.
All right.
If you ever come to my house, you could see I don't know how to match anything, so it was fine.
Any other discussion on those items?
No.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And abstentions. I'd like a motion for item C3, and that is the bid award for Chittick and Irwin.
So moved.
Mrs. Shaw, second. Mr. Philipcheck. Any discussion?
I just have a quick
Yes.
question, and that is, for these HVAC upgrades, are we getting any rebates or energy efficiency funding to offset these costs, or?
No, these two projects, and I think this is something that you and I may have had a conversation about previously. These two projects were already in the works. There were no rebates available at this point in time. We are receiving state funding for these two projects, where the state is, we are approved for 40% of the estimated cost, and I don't recall how that compares to where we are here, but we are getting a substantive amount of state funding to help offset these two projects.
You don't have any idea how much?
Were they
I
the
don't
ROD
remember what the,
grants?
yes, they were ROD grants.
Okay.
Yes, we received ROD grants on these two projects.
And that would have nothing to do with that energy program that we're getting involved with?
No, no.
Okay.
Mr. Giuliano, could you just explain real quick for the audience what a ROD grant is?
ROD grants, ROD grant, ROD stands for Regular Operating District, and that's as opposed to being a district previously known as Avid. Those grants were funds made available by the State Department of Education on an application basis. They were prioritized based on health and safety to begin with, and then they used other de-escalating criteria from there. But the grants provide for up to 40% of the estimated cost of the project. So in each of the applications that we submitted and were approved for, we were successful in these projects as well as others where we received the full 40% of funding on the estimated costs. And I think on this last round, which we received the final approvals just about a year ago, we had been awarded a total, I want to say, was approximately $3.2 million in grants to offset our facilities projects.
Thank you.
Mr.
But Mr.
McElroy.
Giuliani, you are speaking in the past tense, because ROD grants are done,
Yes,
Finished.
at this time.
over, nada. Not gonna see them again.
There are no further funds available at this time.
Yet Trenton can find other mandates to send to the East Brunswick taxpayer, but they cannot reciprocate with some type of ROD grant. Because there were numerous projects you shared with us where we were saving lots of money here, lots of money there, totaling 3.2, and you were getting ROD grants long before Kevin McAvoy was the Board of Education member, but as of today, they don't exist anymore. Thank you, Trenton.
Any other comments on this one? Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And abstentions. Financial items, I'd like a motion to combine items D1, 2, and 3.
Second?
Mr. Philipchak, Mrs. Shaw, is there any discussion? None? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And abstentions? I'd like to combine items E1, 2, 3, and 4. Take
So
a motion
moved.
for that. Mrs. Shaw, second. Mr. Philipchak, is there any discussion? Seeing none, we'll take a roll call then.
I'm sorry, who moved on that?
Mrs. Shaw and Mr. Philipchak.
Thank you. Mrs. Chu?
Yes.
Mrs. Howard?
Yes.
Mr. McAvoy?
Yes.
Mr. Philipchak?
Yes.
Mrs. Shaw?
Yes.
Dr. Cohen?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Is there any old business that needs to be discussed?